Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to another episode of Talking in Bits. But before we actually get to the show, I wanted to remind you guys that Talking in Bits is completely 100% audience funded. What that basically means is that you will never have to sit through no ads while you're listening to Talking in Bits. And the only way we can continue to do that and have been able to do that is with contributions and donations with great listeners such as yourself. So in order to keep that spirit alive, there's a few ways that you can actually donate to the show. My favorite way is Podcasting 2.0 apps. There's a bunch of them out there, but my two favorite are Fountain app and Breeze. And with these apps, it's basically like any other podcasting app. You can subscribe to Talking in Bits. You can load up some sats into the wallet, and you can set how many sats per minute you think Talking in Bits is worth or how much value you're receiving from Talking in Bits. You can do this from both of those apps. Another really cool feature in these apps, these Podcast 2.0 apps, is the Boost feature. And what the Boost feature is basically you get to pick a certain amount of sats that you want to send in, and you can embed a message inside of that transaction into the show. And what I'm going to do is, week to week, the best ones that come in, I'm going to read them and give shout outs here live on the show. So that's another way that you can help keep this ad-free and keep this content rolling. If you're not using the Podcast 2.0 apps, then you can head on over to talkinginbits.com/donate. And there you'll find various links to be able to send in Lightning, to be able to send on-chain, and even to Paynim. So go check out the website. That's another way to contribute. And if you're listening to us on the legacy outlets like YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, then you could do the good old-fashioned leave a review, share, subscribe. All that stuff helps and helps us float up higher so more people can get this value and more people could get everything that we want to provide to our listeners. So once again, we appreciate you. The only reason we've been able to keep this up is because of y'all, and we want to keep that going for as long as we can. All right, without further ado, on to this week's episode.
Scarcity premium. Cannot exceed 21 million. The hardest money that has ever been invented.
I also made the case for owning Bitcoin. The quintessence of scarcity premium.
Scarcity premium.
It's literally the only large tradable asset in the world that has a known fixed maximum supply. By its design, the total quantity of Bitcoins cannot exceed 21 million.
Cannot exceed 21 million.
Bitcoin is the hardest money that has ever been invented.
If you don't have my private key, you cannot spend my Bitcoin, period. And this is the power of Bitcoin.
It's the first time we figured out how to create true property that you can take possession of with full custodial rights.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking in Bits, where we walk you through Bitcoin bit by bit so we can provide you with the information you need to succeed and persist. Back with episode 68, and I got Nate from Voltage in the house. Hey, Nate, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's going on? Great to be here.
Yeah, I was saying great to formally meet you. You actually did with, and maybe Voltage just does this as a whole company, but you actually sat there with me in the DMs, and you walked me through connecting my BTC Pay server to my node, which I am forever grateful for, good sir. I don't think you're the only person that would have done that.
Oh man, I mean, I love helping people with setting all this stuff up. I mean, just a couple years ago, it was a lot harder than it is today, and I think a lot of folks are still stuck into that. Oh, it's a hard sort of mindset sort of thing. I'm not saying you were like that or anything, but you know, more and more people are realizing it's getting easier. And just a little bit of help, a little bit of nudge here and there. I love to help people with that.
Yeah. I think it was just the aspect. Like it would have been so easy for you to just say, hey, here's our, client services email, and you can just reach out to client services and we'll follow up with you. But you were like, nah, let's hammer this right now in the DMs.
That's actually kind of how I am. Like in college, dude, I would get the syllabus and like whatever I could knock out early, I would knock out early and just save it for like whenever it was due. So I had more time to party and play video games and stuff. So
Smart man.
I don't like having like things like shadow over me. I just want to knock it out and no weight on my shoulders. But I love it when people reach out and ask questions. I'm usually right there, like you said.
Yeah, so that was my introduction to you, Nate. Sort of my introduction to Voltage. I mean, I've heard of you guys a little bit before that. But before we get into Voltage, just give the listeners a little bit about your background and possibly your Bitcoin story, because we all have one.
Yeah.
And I'd love to share it.
Yeah. I guess the quick version of that is after college about 10 years ago, I had a heart. I was always a libertarian. And I went to this meetup in Denver, probably 2013-ish. They talked about Bitcoin there, but they talked about it as a way to make payments, not really the principles of the finite supply or anything like that. So it didn't really click with me because I was like, well, no one's accepting Bitcoin, so why should I care, right? Plus, I was broke. So a couple years later, or so, Mt. Gox happened, right after Bitcoin hit $1,000, and I was always watching it, right? Because I'm a libertarian, I'm plugged in on this sort of thing. And then I was like, all right, you know what? After the Mt. Gox crash, I was like, if Bitcoin can go over $1,000 again, I'm going to really, really, really look into it, right?
Yeah.
So I won't say exactly when I got in, but that's sort of when it crossed $1,000 again, I was kind of like, all right, I'm going to look into it. There was a time frame there before I actually got in because I like to learn about these things first, but eventually got in. So I worked in airline operations actually for 6 years until and stacking Bitcoin, through most of that. And last year, my daughter was born in March, and I got 2 months off of work. So what I decided to do was I spooled up a Calendly, and a couple hours every afternoon, I would open it up to anyone that wanted to talk about Lightning, talk about nodes. I got into Lightning in 2018 bear market and early 2019 because I wanted something to do that wasn't price related, right? Like I wasn't going to sell. I rode that 2018 crash all the way. I didn't care. I was focused on learning and understanding Lightning and doing all this. And I was like, I need to spread my knowledge a little bit. That was when the PlebNet started also. Okay. So I was really involved in the beginning stages of that. But I had I talked about 60 Bitcoiners just off of Twitter and helped them with Lightning. And then last September, Graham, the CEO of Voltage, heard about me. He said, hey, I followed you throughout your whole consulting thing, and I'm looking for someone to sort of spearhead our support and education side of the company. What do you think? And, we feel financially secure to try something new, my family and I. So that's what we did. I've been with Voltage for about 9 months now.
There's a lot to unpack there for sure.
Yeah. So wherever you want to go with that, but that's the story.
Well, the easy one that you could just literally give me one sentence on is airline operations. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So every airline that takes passengers around has a command center. And I worked in a major airline control center, major airline control center, just trying to keep things working. I'll just say that. So
making sure planes don't crash into other planes.
It's a union-based, seniority-based setup, right? Yeah. Trade kind of thing. And when you're still kind of a newbie your first 10 years. So, I worked graveyard shift for a long time. And after my daughter was born and stuff, I'm like, I don't want to do this sleeping all day thing anymore. Voltage came at a perfect time.
When I hear union and when I hear seniority, I just think fiat.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that type of structure that only works in that universe.
Yeah. And the top tier guys making top tier pay, they're the ones that are complaining the most. And it's just really just terrible. But it was still a good gig overall, but I'm really, really happy to be full-time Bitcoin now and doing what I love.
Yeah, definitely. I come, I don't think it's a secret anymore for the listeners, but I work for Unchained Capital now. I'm the senior client services team member there. And before that, I come from healthcare. So that whole seniority thing, that's why I keep thinking like fiat. But anyways.
That's the thing. Like if I wasn't stacking enough, like if I wasn't stacking Bitcoin to the point where it's like, I could try something new, like Bitcoin like freed me, right? Like if I didn't have that sort of comfort in knowing that I was financially secure, I wouldn't want to shift careers like that. So I really thank Bitcoin for that opportunity. And like you said, it's kind of like we're moving towards what we want to be. And I think Bitcoin empowers that.
Yeah, no, I say it to my wife all the time. Bitcoin saved my life, which ultimately is going to help me save the life of my family. But I remember just being miserable. I used to work in an operating room. I started to spike up during the COVID situation where like they literally had us wearing like goggles and like face mask, and I could barely breathe. And I remember just like venting in like a random closet in the corner, or like, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Dude, they put like temperature sensors in the doorway that like lasered your forehead automatically to tell you if you were sick or not. We did have a mask thing. I never ever wore a mask. And
Nice.
the managers didn't give me any crap because I think we're all on the same page. I'm just like, I don't care. Fire me if you want to. I'm not wearing this thing for 10 hours a day. I'm sorry. So,
Yeah.
but they didn't care. So I give them props for that.
No, I had to. I tried to resist, but in the hospital
The
scenario,
medical thing though, yeah.
they always use the patient. Oh, well, what about the patient? And then leverage. And then
Yeah.
I got like months away from forced vaccination, right? So like they were already talking about it and like, oh, coming up in November. And this was about like May. And I was like, oh shit, like this is about, I got to figure this out now. I got to get the fuck out of here. And
Yeah. Wake
yeah.
up call.
Yeah, so I applied to a bunch of places. Strike was posting all that. But Unchained Capital, I just like, I'm a real big believer in like when you like kind of like, I guess envision it or like speak things into fruition, like they kind of just happen.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how it was. Even though I applied to a bunch of different companies, like Unchained Capital's position was like, I can do this. I know that this is what I can do. I can help people with multi-signature. I know multi-signature.
Yeah.
And then I emailed. First of all, shout out to Kaylee. I know you know Kaylee, right? Kaylee Buemi.
Yeah, absolutely. I see her all the time.
So shout out to
I'm in
Kaylee.
Texas too, so yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll be down there soon. We can get in that in a little bit.
Okay.
But and your post earlier about Texas seceding, I want to talk about that. But anyways, I saw Kaylee posted a post basically saying, "Hey, I got the job at Unchained Capital." All that, and I went into her DMs, and I actually thanked her for this a few months ago in retrospect, and I was like, I don't know what I need to do, but I want to get into Unchained Capital. Like, help, right? And then she didn't know who the fuck I was. So she was like, I can't help you, but she gave me some advice. She was like, make your typical advice, but it was valuable to me at the time. She was like, make your email stand out, right? Like, just have a crazy headline that just makes no sense and make it stand out. So, in my desperate act here, I think the heading, the subject line was, if I were to write a Bitcoin movie, it would be, and then I hit like the ellipsis or whatever, and then I went on to just explain everything I've done. Like, oh, I set up my own node, and I would help empower people to run Lightning, and then I would teach them just a bunch of stuff that I can't remember. But 2 days later, I got Eric Kaysen, which is funny, like in this Bitcoin universe, right? So like Eric Kaysen reaches out and he's like, hey, we're looking for client services. We just saw your resume. What's up? You want an interview? And I was like, oh shit. Like I read Eric Kaysen's work all the time. This is crazy that this is happening. Long story, less longer. Yeah, I basically got in and afterwards, Joe Kelly, CEO, basically was like, hey, it was because you wrote that email that you got this job. Like it literally just stood out among the rest, and we didn't, we cared about your qualifications, but not as much as your passion and how much you cared about Bitcoin.
Exactly. That's in this industry. That's all it really is. It's taking the time. Like you're not getting paid to do it. It's your hobby, your passion, and those. I think that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to explain that to like now I talk to my sister who's trying to get into the space, and I tell her that same story. Like, hey, it's all about passion. Forget the fiat world. They don't care about resumes. They don't care about that stuff. It's what you do. And she just can't believe that. She's like, she's older than me, but she's like so torn on like, no, I need to have my resume buttoned up, and it needs to have like my historical work record. And when I worked at the grocery store 20 years ago, I'm like, nobody cares about that nonsense.
Yeah, especially, I mean, like going to conferences and meeting people and just, being cool and just having conversations is the way to go. And we're still a small industry. I don't think it's going to be like that forever, but right now I think it's definitely the golden age for just kind of meeting people and growing. Yeah,
absolutely. And the community is so accepting. But I want to go to Lightning then. Well, one question about Lightning, then Voltage. But before I go into that, you said you've always been a libertarian, and I know there's a lot of talk about this in the community. Yeah, right. Sorry. But I know there's a lot of talk about this
transition period, but yeah.
Gotcha. So I read a Bitcoin magazine article. I forgot who wrote it, maybe a few weeks ago, that was making like the case for, the left, right, accepting Bitcoin. I know the right accepts Bitcoin, and now, the libertarian space. So in your opinion, what makes Bitcoin attractive to not only any of those political leanings, but libertarians specifically?
Yeah. So, I mean, my this is a conversation we could do like a multi-part special if you want, but to boil it down, there's like, in my head, the left and right is left is maximum government, like to the far end, and then right is no government.
Yeah.
That doesn't directly correlate to the modern ideas of liberalism and conservatism. It's a totally separate idea, sort of. So on that, it's kind of like where your head's at, right? Like I prefer to have rules, but I don't prefer to have rulers, right? So that is my foundation for preference. Obviously, Bitcoin fits that amazingly because it's incorruptible rules with no rulers. And I get to choose what code I run on my node. I get to choose the rules on my node. If there's people out there that also agree with those rules, our nodes talk, our nodes interoperate, and here we are. That's consensus. So to answer your question, like libertarian, that's sort of my thought. I try to have, rules rather than rulers. You can call me an anarcho-capitalist. I would probably say that is accurate. But, we live in a statist world, but in my head, I have my principles, not aggression principle, all those foundational Rothbardian sort of things those are the principles I attach myself to. So if someone wrote an article about Bitcoin for the contemporary progressive left or whatever, and why that's good for them, cool, go for it.
Yeah.
Do what you gotta do. If all the communists in the world suddenly love Bitcoin, I would also still love Bitcoin. Like that wouldn't change the rules or anything. So,
yeah. No, I love that frame of mind where it's like, people take it's, you can shift your mindset at any point in time and kind of like evolve to a new mindset. I'm here in Massachusetts currently, but I was always one of those guys, which is a blue leftist state, sort of like California, all that. But I was always the guy that felt myself lost here, meaning that like I never vibed with any political agenda, to be honest, not the right or the left. So, there was a stage in my life where I actually felt like I was doing something wrong. Like, it's like, how come I'm not picking a side? Like everybody seems to be so either right or so either left. And like, especially New Hampshire, which is right on our borders, which is, so it's like, am I doing something wrong? And then it wasn't until Bitcoin that I figured out that no, like they're doing something wrong by being so connected to, I guess, a political system that doesn't really give a shit about them, but they think it does. So I don't know where I land. I don't know if it's libertarian or what, but I agree. I like the rules.
Principles are tough. It's just like principles are what matter though. Like, and principles, there's no like a range of principles. It's either you have a principle or you don't. It needs to apply to everything. If it doesn't apply to everything, it's not a principle. It's different. So, there are, I would say, very, very minute exceptions to some principles, such as the non-aggression principle, where it's okay to sort of initiate violence in very, very specific circumstances. There's a lot of talk in libertarianism about that sort of thing. But in general, that is kind of where I'm at, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm still figuring it out. But no labels is good fun for me. Like, just let me.
I just don't feel like I need a babysitter to be a good person. Kind of.
Good point. Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. I feel like politics and laws and stuff. Like I understand like the point, but for me personally, it's like I'll be okay. Just let me do my thing. I won't hurt anybody. So.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, let's go into a little bit of Lightning here. I want to bounce. Cool. I want to go from you were early on Lightning. I would say 2018, and then let me know how Lightning was when you were consulting people or when you first got your hands on it, and then lead me all the way to Voltage.
Yeah. Okay. So in 2018, market's crashing. I'm not dealing with altcoins or whatever anymore. That was a brief thing. The funny thing, the quick and dirty about that was like, I originally was thinking that was a cool idea, right? This was when Binance had like no KYC. It was like, whatever. Yeah. And suddenly I realized that all this crap was taking up too much of my time. I had other hobbies and things I wanted to do. So I was just like, screw it. I'm just going to put it all into Bitcoin and learn Bitcoin only. So I was only doing that crap for a few months. But the reason why was like, when you sit back and realize how many hours a day am I spending like trying to do this? And I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't want to do that anymore. So that was kind of where I was at. Yeah. But I was like, okay, cool. What do I do next? And I was on Reddit, and Reddit's like, run a node. I'm like, okay, cool. And I install a node on my laptop, the basic Bitcoin Core node. And then I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then, learning more Lightning. Okay, what's that all about? So I didn't really know a lot, but someone brought up this idea of you can have a Raspberry Pi. It could be a separate machine. You can do all this stuff with it. I had no Linux experience whatsoever at this point. Zero. I have a technical aptitude, but I'm not a developer. I could have been probably. I might even still be if I really want to. But I have the technical aptitude if I focus and do it. Like, I believe in myself. I'm one of those people that I'm like, I can do something. If I believe in it, I can do it, sort of thing. So I found a guide called the RaspiBolt. And this was put out by an awesome Bitcoiner named Staticus. And the RaspiBolt is just a series of steps that you type in the commands. It tells you which commands to put in. And at the end of it, you'll have a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node. Nice. So at that time, I kind of just wanted a Bitcoin node though, but I was like, cool, I get a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node and I can kind of play around with this. Why not, right?
Yeah.
So I figured out Linux and whatever, the basics to at least get there. And there was, I guess my first experience was one of the first mobile apps was Eclair, the Eclair mobile app by Async. And it was a mobile app. It was it was an actual node on your phone. It drained the battery like crazy, but you can open and close channels on it and stuff. And that was really my first experience with Lightning, just kind of reverse a little bit. My first purchase was buying stickers from the Blockstream store.
With Lightning or about Lightning?
With Lightning.
Okay, cool.
They had this Lightning only store and there were stickers.
Yeah.
And it was just like the most novel, cool thing.
Sure.
And that's probably maybe early 2019. It was around there. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that node I learned a lot with. The early days were, 1ML came early enough at least. And so 1ML is sort of was the original aggregate for public Lightning information. So you can see nodes on the network, how many channels they have and stuff. And, I made mistakes. I opened up channels. I allocated funds that, I wasn't afraid to lose. It was still reckless at the time. This is beta software, super dangerous, yada, yada. Not super dangerous, but like you could lose it, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So it was really like, it felt like I'm just like a whole other weird Wild West world. And then people are starting to make visual network graphs of the Lightning network. So you can see the nodes in like a cool, and those are still out there. It's just a ton more, right? There's like 17,000 public nodes.
Yeah.
Nodes with public channels on the network right now, but back then there was like 200 or 200 or 300. I'm like, this is really cool. And then it suddenly kept growing. Eventually I was like, I want to take this really, really seriously. I like the idea of playing with fees and seeing where that goes. So I ditched the Raspberry Pi and I actually built myself a mini ITX computer for $500 and installed Linux on that because I want something that's going to last a long time. Sure. And my node has been running on that baby ever since.
Really nice.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the little story there.
Yeah. So that, once again, you're tech savvy, but it requires work at that time, right?
Yeah.
And now
absolutely.
if even when I jumped onto my first, I did a not a RaspiBlitz.
Yeah, that was shortly after RaspiBolt. Yeah.
Okay, so I got mine in November 2020, and it was specifically for podcasting 2.0 or whatever, to experiment with that and get the podcast set up, which I do want to talk about here. But I even found it myself to be pretty difficult to set up. The instructions were there, the GitHub was there, it was pretty laid out, but it still took me about a week or two to actually get this thing running and synced up and ready to rock and roll. So I want you to speed up from your setup to what you guys are doing at Voltage. And let me know how you guys are actually making that just a breeze, if you were to ask me. But yeah, connect those two dots there.
No, yeah. So that's kind of how it went, shortly. So RaspiBlitz is awesome, but still has that Linux command line sort of element to it.
Yep.
A big leap forward after that was my node. And my node is just to install it on your Raspberry Pi, and you get a nice little dashboard. You don't need to do command line or whatever. At least you shouldn't need to. However, they did have that functionality built in case something breaks or something. I personally still think MyNode is a great project. If anyone hasn't checked it out, you can run Samurai Dojo on it and Electrum server and all this other stuff too, rather than everything. And then Umbrel came around and Embassy came around, and now Umbrel and Embassy, same sort of idea as MyNode with a little bit more clean UI. But the difference between Embassy and Umbrel compared to everything else is Embassy and Umbrel are now competing for this sovereign computer space where you can run other stuff other than Bitcoin, like secure chat apps, file sharing, Tor stuff, whatever, which is cool. And then, when you're a merchant or if you're traveling around all the time and you want to run a node and you want to be able to interface with that node on your phone to buy stuff or use it or receive in some way on your travels, you don't want to have to worry that your power is going to go out at home base and now your node doesn't work and now you have to fly home to turn your node back on or something crazy like that. And merchants also, if you're doing a sale, you don't want your point of sale system to suddenly go down because the power went out and your Raspberry Pi is toast or whatever, right? So those are just a couple of use cases for Voltage, which provides Lightning nodes and a couple other services right now to people who want to run a Lightning node, but it's in the cloud. It's on a database somewhere else and it's running. But the cool thing is the password that you use to unlock your node is not saved anywhere on Voltage, and it's actually the encryption, or I should say the decryption key for your node. So that password is just as the same kind of password that you would use if you're running a node at home. It is your node. So that's really, really cool. We have a built-in dashboard called Thunderhub, which a lot of Lightning users will know about. It's probably the best user interface to manage a node out there. We just released LN Bits, and Voltage is also really good for Lightning app developers. So you don't have to deal with updates, upgrades, maintenance, all this stuff. We got a really cool API for developers that can just plug in and get going. And we've seen a lot of success with that. And we've got a really cool roadmap that we're working on. And I think Voltage really fills that niche. And I think also Voltage fills the niche of maybe folks that just want to maybe start a node, maybe just for 2 weeks. Maybe they want to run a crowdfund campaign or something, and they just want to spool one up real quick, run their campaign, shut it all down, and go home. That's really easy to do on Voltage. You can do it in under 5 minutes.
That's extremely powerful.
Yeah, so we've the whole sort of node running space is continuing to improve in usability and in speed and function and all that. So the trend is good.
Yeah. No, you guys got a lot going on. I'm super excited. Just I'm the early user of your product, but it's just considering what it took me to set up my RaspiBlitz, and like you said, how fast I was able to set up a BTC Pay server, node length, it was just immediate. Now, you highlighted some of the pros of obviously, having a cloud node, meaning, you don't have to worry about it shutting down or having to go back home. Is there any trade-offs the other way, like not having the hardware myself versus having it on the cloud? Am I losing anything by having it hosted?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So, like I said, a node on Voltage, you get everything that you would get running at home as far as functionality. You get all your macaroons, so you can do remote connections. You obviously get your seed phrase for recovery, your channel backup files for recovery, access to all the logs and what's going on as well. So recovery, if I can't imagine a scenario if Voltage shuts down or whatever, would be the exact same sort of recovery process that you would use if your node, hardware failed at home. It's the exact same sort of thing. The risk is the biggest risk is, so what I've sort of thought it is, we're non-custodial, but we're not trustless. You're still trusting Voltage to manage the updates and the upgrades, and then you're trusting us to have limited access to whatever data throughput you're having. It's very difficult to prove some of what we're claiming, but it is trustless, but it's not. Or sorry, it's not trustless, but it's not custodial, if that makes sense. So we don't see what you're doing on your node exactly. We don't see your channels or anything, but we do see your email of your voltage account. And we do see that that is tied to a node alias, for example. Like that there's a few things there that we do see, but like what you're doing on the node itself and how much capital of that node that you control, et cetera, no idea. And it's a no KYC global product. So it's just an email and password. We don't care what your name is or anything like that. And that's how that works. We use a credit-based system. When I say credit, I mean you add sort of credits to your account through, it could be a credit card or through Bitcoin. And then we charge by the hour. So we've got, I think it's like 4 cents per hour for like the standard node and a little under 2 cents for what we call light node. For anyone curious on how the pricing on that works. But
which is great.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Yeah.
That kind of balances out, in my opinion, at least when I was doing my justification, to the electricity you were spent anyways to have it running in your house constantly. And then also, correct me if I'm wrong here, you don't have to worry about storage, right? Because what I mean by that is right now I have a 1 terabyte hard drive linked to my node. Blockchain continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, I'm going to have to upgrade that tera drive, to something else. So your guys is kind of taking care of that for the user. Is that safe to say, or did I get that wrong?
That is correct. Our standard nodes all get the same Bitcoin layer 1 data from the same master node. We do have the option for folks to have their own segregated Bitcoin instance. That because of the hard drive space, though, that is a little bit pricier, but enterprises really like having their own special area for that. But correct, 90% of the nodes feed off the same Bitcoin core node. And so we have redundancies on that built in also in case it fails or something, but
So that hourly fee is nothing. That kind of just gets eaten up by what it would cost to maintain it at home anyways, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I haven't done the math on that, but it could be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Massachusetts, so I'm paying about 14 cents per kilowatt. So I'm not getting cheap electricity any way, shape, or form. My miner reminds me of that every day. All right, yeah, fantastic. So so you guys don't, unless the user, you guys don't. You were saying that like Umbro, and I'm not a big fan of Umbro, but it sounded like you were saying they started to move towards bloatware, if that makes sense. Like when I buy a Samsung phone. And I get
there
a bunch
is
of these
that
extra
argument, yeah.
Okay, is that you guys are not offering any of that? You guys are just clean cut.
No, we are very, very
which I respect, by the way.
Quality driven. So gosh, yeah, it was. I think it was earlier this year. So when I joined Voltage, we only had 2 products. We had the LND Lightning node and the BTC Pay server. Okay. And BTC Pay server links up with your Lightning node if you want to run both. We could talk about that later, but it's awesome. After that, we released Flow, which is a way for your Voltage node and even external nodes can use Flow if they want to essentially put an order into the Lightning Pool marketplace for inbound liquidity. And that took a while to develop. We recently, finally, in my opinion, got LNbits to be native within the Voltage platform, and that was really hard because we have to use encrypted macaroons to do this. And working with all the open source devs out there, and they're working with us. Hey, we want to implement this into our platform, but we need some of these functions, and it all worked out. So for those that don't know, LNbits is a really powerful tool that feeds off of a Lightning node and allows you to have, there's so many things actually. So check it out, but it's free with every Voltage node. So that doesn't cost anything extra. We're giving it as a free service to everybody. But you can have a point of sale. You can have LNURL, which is sort of like a static invoice for Lightning payments, and a bunch of other stuff. So we just added that. And then we're also working on what we announced in Miami, which we're calling Surge, which is going to be a premium product, but it's going to be a very robust, interactive, customizable way to get analytics on your node. So for those that really want to see which channels are performing really well, which are kind of duds, help you manage your capital on your nodes. We're working really hard on that right now, and that's going to be like a proprietary voltage built product that we're working on. And there's a few other things too, but that's all we've announced so far.
No, it's amazing. I want to circle back on Flow real quick. I'm not very familiar with the LN pool, but I'm super familiar with always having shitty inbound liquidity. So, so how can Flow help me? How does it kind of work? Is this for like the everyday person like me, or is this geared more towards businesses that have a lot of incoming payments?
Yeah, so I mean, that was the general idea. So for those that don't know, Lightning Pool is a Lightning Labs product. It only works on the LND implementation, which we run here at Voltage. And it essentially allows folks to say, hey, I want to open a 10 million sat channel, and I want to open it to anybody, but you have to pay me to open it for you. And then, if you want to buy that channel, you can type in whatever. But the real thing about Lightning Pool is it's a blind marketplace. It uses a reputation system to make sure that, people who's running terrible nodes don't sell channels. But it's just a blind market. So you don't get to say, ooh, I will pick that node and I will order from him. It's just sort of a blind market. What Flow does is it is sort of a wrapper over the buying side of that order book. So on Flow, on Voltage, you simply type in, I want a 2 million sat channel. I'm willing to pay X amount of sats for it and, order it. And if you're running a Voltage node, it will automatically register, and hopefully it will match with somebody who is trying to sell something like that. But, that could take time. The order book has been sometimes really good volume, sometimes really low volume. Sometimes, it could take a few days.
Yeah.
But so there's that aspect. But that's basically all Flow is. It's actually, I think, really, really cool. If you're running a MyNode or an Umbrel at home and you want to use Flow to get inbound liquidity on your node at home, you can still do that also. It just gives you like a string, like a ticket. You just copy that over and paste it into your home node Lightning terminal, and you can get a channel that way too. So, but we could talk about I love talking about selling and buying channels on Lightning.
Let's do it.
Like we could talk about Magma, which just came out, which I'm really excited about.
School me.
Cool. So for those that don't know, the developer of ThunderHub, which is that sort of interface into your node, I guess last year started a company called Amboss. You can go to amboss.space, and amboss.space was essentially a competitor to 1ML, which from earlier, which is just an aggregate of information about the Lightning Network and nodes on the network, all the public information. Amboss came out, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago with this product called Magma. And on Amboss, you can claim your node. You can prove that you own a node, and then you can basically just say, I want to sell 2 million sats for this much, and just put it out there as sort of like a market board. And the people that want to buy channels can go in there and say, okay, I will. And they can actually now, vet the node that is selling. So I can click that node and I can see, oh, they have a lot of channels. They've been around for a while. I'll buy a channel from them and get inbound liquidity from them. So Magma is really, really cool because unlike Lightning Pool, it doesn't have implementation problems. Like only LND nodes can work with Lightning Pool, but Blockstream's core Lightning implementation can now sell channels to LND nodes with this market board. So they're working really hard on that. They've I'm looking at it right now, there's 52 orders on there right now, and they've sold over almost 400 channels in just a few weeks. So it's getting really, really cool to sort of earn a yield, I guess, using your Lightning node if you really, really want to do that.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. Is that the, maybe not the first, maybe I'm just being naive here, but I remember a few episodes back, I had John Carvalho on, and he was talking about like the, Lightning has different flavors, right? He didn't use the word flavors. I used the word flavors, but like, that's the first time I've actually heard of where like two flavors can actually mesh and do something together. Is that the first of its kind, Magma, or am I just missing?
To my knowledge, yeah.
That's interesting.
So Core Lightning, the Blockstream implementation, has liquidity ads, which is very, very similar to Magma, and it's built into their implementation, but only Core Lightning nodes can use it to combine and sell from each other. So yeah, it's really neat. I love seeing this. But to answer your question, though, yeah, like merchants need inbound liquidity to receive payments. There needs to be an easy way, and we're not to like the automatic point of it yet. We've got sort of filler, in my opinion, sort of filler services like OpenNode, for example, which is kind of like a Stripe or a Clover, but for Bitcoin stuff. So they take 1% each way, but you don't have to worry about managing channels or anything like that. But as soon as we can get liquidity automation on a self-sovereign node, that's going to be great. And I know that that's where we're going.
Yep.
And I'm just that's where we're going. We're going to be able to just get that liquidity, and then merchant butcher shop across the street can just set up and just be sovereign and not have to worry about it. So it's not going to be tomorrow, but that's what a lot of developers are working towards.
Well, that's going to be my next question. How far away do you think we are from that, in your opinion?
I'm always really optimistic.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to see more automation coming from sort of products like ThunderHub and other open source tools. Everyone knows that is really important for onboarding more and more users onto Lightning, especially users that maybe aren't in a Western stable country or something and just want to sell T-shirts or or burritos or whatever, right? On the street or whatever, and they just want to like push that button and I want some Bitcoin. I really am enjoying keeping an eye on what's going on in El Salvador. I talk to people down there, and I want to hear how they're experiencing it. And that's sort of the trend. They just want a lot of folks are learning about Bitcoin and they want to accept Bitcoin. They just and we just want to make it easier for that. So automation is the key. There's a lot of people working on it. I think that in the next couple of years, I think before next halving, we're going to have some decent automation tools. It probably won't be perfect, but we're going to be continually going down that direction.
Gotcha. Sooner rather than later, sounds like. How worried are you about the different implementations or flavors, if we want to keep using that term, and the fact that developers are kind of headstrong on their implementation, but they're not working together on one implementation? Right. I had Keon on the show, and Keon was explaining to me how he sees it more like web browsers, right? Where like there's a Chrome crowd, there's Internet Explorer crowd. I always thought about it as different types of currencies, I guess, right? Like you may be using the U.S. quarter versus a euro or anything like that. I like his analogy better, but I want to get your take.
Yeah. So Lightning as a protocol is a lot different from Bitcoin as a protocol. It's not consensus driven, really. You can make your own Lightning Network implementation if you want to. But when Lightning was first sort of getting going, there was developer discussion about let's standardize the way we generate invoices and like all this like foundational stuff. And those were called the bolts, basics of Lightning technology. And there's 11 of those. And pretty much, actually, dare I say, all of them adhere to those first 11 rules, that interoperability. Beyond that, there's discussion about, so developers at Core Lightning have this idea of, so right now, Lightning Network is a pool-based payment system by default, the Bolt 11 invoice, where the person receiving the money has to generate and give an invoice to whoever's buying it. Now, there's been really cool developments around, like I said, Lightning address and these other things. But one of the other ideas is having a Bolt so everybody can with a static invoice, and that's being worked on at Blockstream very, very hard. But folks at maybe Lightning Labs, they're working on Taproot integration and their new Taro project. So they're not as plugged into that, because I don't want to speak for them, but you can spend a pub key, which is called key send, and do all these other things. So they're like all these teams are like working on these other like sort of projects and stuff. So I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. But maybe implementations will like a flavor, but maybe even serve different niches sort of. And then we got the Lightning Development Kit from Spiral, which is a library for developers to make their own implementations to fill a niche need that they want. Like maybe, you can make a Lightning node implementation that, well, actually they already have, John Cantrell is working on Sensei, which is using the Lightning Development Kit. And there's other open source devs kind of playing with it a little bit, which has the ability for you to run a master node that controls the liquidity of child nodes. So now you can, even though the child nodes own the liquidity, the parent node manages the liquidity, sort of.
Interesting.
So like really interesting little niche ideas like that. I don't know what else is being built, but I think that it will probably be more implementations filling certain niches. Like maybe there'll be a Lightning node implementation for gamers or like whatever. Like, I don't know how that's going to go, but I don't think we're going to be just at Lightning Labs and Blockstream and async forever. I think that there's going to be more than that, but I won't see them as competitors per se, but I think developers will want to like fill in specific niches, and making your own is sometimes a lot faster than contributing to existing projects, because there's,
yeah, that fits the that definitely fits the browser analogy very well then, because like you use a Brave or a Tor browser for privacy, but maybe you do a Chrome browser for the convenience of Google services. And they all live in the same universe, but you can jump around as you please or as you need.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with that. I wouldn't disagree. I think in a general sense, that might make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Lightning's a wild west, man. Every time I try to dig in, there's always new stuff, and I'm trying to figure it out. Is Lightning the most exciting thing going on in Bitcoin right now, in your opinion?
Absolutely. And I think it's still under the radar in a lot of ways. Like I hear people talking about, and I think it's cool, a lot of these concepts, but like, part of me, like, I really want to see like a new cool future. Like, I think it's neat seeing like Lightning payments on NFC cards and stuff. But at the same time, I don't want to deal with plastic cards anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't want to live in this, like, I don't want like, or neobanks, which, I think some ideas are really cool. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to have to use a bank anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I want to build something new and fresh.
Yeah.
I understand the need to be like, oh, let's put Lightning into like a legacy sort of thing to maybe make it easier for grandma to understand, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah.
I understand the drive to do that, but I'm more focused on like making really new novel stuff and playing with that.
All right. Well, speaking of grandma, this is a good segue to my next idea that I actually saw you battle this out on Twitter.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Custodial Lightning versus non-custodial Lightning. Right. So grandma's much better experience is going to be with, let's say, a Cash App implementation of Lightning, and maybe even.
The node stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to having a Zeus wallet and trying to use Lightning, grandma's not going to be able to fathom that.
Right. So my tweet was basically saying Bitcoiners that understand Bitcoin at a base layer, they can send, receive transactions, maybe they even run a node at home or whatever. There's no excuse not to be playing with Lightning. You have the chops to do it. It's not reckless anymore. You can spool up a node on Voltage or on your computer or whatever and open up a channel. And people don't like spending Bitcoin. I do. I'm sorry, whatever. I think it's fun. I really enjoy buying stuff that nobody knows that I'm buying it. I think that's cool. Yeah. I'm not paranoid. I just like that concept. But I think the more people that learn how to do that now, I think that will pay in the future. They will be the leaders of the future. They might even get really, into it, which is great. So I'm just that tweet was just me trying to reach out to Bitcoiners. I hear all the time say, I just buy Bitcoin on Coinbase and I send it to my ledger and then I go to Twitter and then I talk. It's like, no, go run a Lightning node, dude. You can do it.
Well, what about the another thread that you're probably beefing? I think the guy's name was like X21 or something, which he's usually one of those guys. But where he was basically saying that it's trending towards PayPal 2.0, like the Lightning Network itself.
Yeah, so that is an absolute possibility in the long term.
Okay.
But who knows what kind of developments will happen in the long term? Like there's innovations and stuff that we can't even think of because we're not those galaxy brain developers that don't spend all the time on Twitter. They're out, with their nose to the grindstone or going to cryptography conventions or I don't know what they're doing, but they're the builders, right? Yeah. They could be building something that maybe will move us away from that in the future. But, that might be the long-term destination because Bitcoin keeps going the way it's going. We got, on-chain congestion might actually happen, which makes opening Lightning channels more prohibitive, which means how do you onboard people now if on-chain is basically useless and you can't open channels anymore?
Yeah,
I understand that concern, but I'm hopeful that those problems, like I said, the really smart people also see those and are also brainstorming ideas with their own secret communities, I'm sure, on IRC or whatever. I mean, or maybe even just secret. I don't know. But I have faith in our super smart devs that have their nose to the grindstone all the time to foresee this stuff and find solutions because that's not the trajectory we want to go.
Yeah, we don't want to stoke that fire if we don't have to, for sure. So what do you spend Bitcoin? I do too. What are some of your favorite ways on using Lightning and spending your Bitcoin?
Yeah. So I usually have a few sats on Zeus on my phone and around town when I'm in Austin, a few spots take Bitcoin, which is really cool. Yeah. Shout out to the Tipsy Alchemist, Three Forks Steakhouse also accepts now and a few other spots. A lot of spots actually in Austin now. Shout out to Mike Atwood, who's like the huge evangelizer of accepting Bitcoin in Austin.
I'm going to have him on next week.
Yeah. I really like Pay with Moon, not to be confused with Moon Pay, which is a shitcoin company, but Pay with Moon, which is you basically can just buy a Visa gift card, virtual Visa gift card with Bitcoin. So you go to delta.com, you book a flight, it says it's $403.12. You go to Pay with Moon, type in $403.12, pay the Lightning invoice, gives you a thing, type it in, boom, now you got a ticket. You basically spent Bitcoin. It's not like Delta's accepting Bitcoin or anything, but it's enough that, your banks don't know, your credit card companies don't know. I'm not saying you have anything to hide. I'm just saying that's cool. It's like spending cash through the internet. Nobody really knows.
But they shouldn't sell it either. They shouldn't profit off of your, buying history or purchases. So that's a way around that thing too.
Yeah.
You may not be hiding anything, but when you start seeing these random ads, well, that's because your damn bank is selling all that information on what it is that you're buying with your card. So yeah.
Exactly. I'm just more aware of all of these entities that are trying to extract information for me without me really understanding or consenting.
It's a game changer since they added the adding it to the Apple Pay or whatever, where you can now take it off.
Or Google Pay too.
That's a game changer. I was like, oh, it's a wrap. I'm just gonna walk around here and just have these cards on my phone.
Yeah.
Beautiful thing. How about streaming? You stream any stats? Valley for Valley podcasting? You use your stats for that?
I'm on Fountain. I do on Fountain a little bit.
Likewise, that's one of my favorite ways to just give back to the circle, to the economy. And Oscar's been great to me. Shout out to Oscar. I had him on the show. I love what Fountain is doing for sure.
I got in the Fountain because a few months ago, Lisa from Blockstream and I started our own sort of little podcast called This Week in Lightning.
Nice.
And we got on Fountain and got a few listeners, but like Lisa and I are really good friends, and we talk about Lightning and stuff all the time. So we were just like, let's just record it. So we have a Bitcoin TV channel, and it's kind of like, I don't want to like compare us, but it's similar to not underground, Citadel Dispatch a little bit. How nice. They have sort of like the folks who are talking, and then they have sort of like a screen, so a screen share type thing, so you can follow along with what we're talking about. So if anyone's curious in that, we do that sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Go check it out. Go support listeners. You got definitely. I'm gonna go support checking it out. I love streaming sats. I just think it's. I don't know, all the years that I've paid for like a Spotify subscription, where I know none of these creators are getting jack shit. It just makes me feel that much better that I could actually stream to you direct. It's a beautiful thing.
I love the idea of Lightning getting rid of spam, getting rid of all this junk that we have to deal with as users of the internet. And like, this isn't the digital age I want. Like I want it. I just want to get rid of the junk, and I think Vita, which is an awesome little project. I mean, we've heard of Vita.live.
No, I haven't. What's that?
Oh man. So real quick, Vita.live is you log in with your Twitter account, and basically it is a way to receive messages or talk or stream with sats. So you can say, you can send me a message and it costs 1,000 sats to send me a message. Nice. And there's also a way where people that don't follow you on Twitter, if they DM you, it'll say, go to Vita and pay this invoice because I don't check DMs from people that I don't follow very often. So prove that you actually want to talk to me and we'll talk.
Yeah.
So like cool little things like that. And he uses a voltage node on the back end too.
Hey.
Really cool products. Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I'm going to go broke. I always got to reach out to people to ask random questions to be on the podcast. So if they start hitting me up with these invoices, I'm going to go broke. Well, speaking of Lisa, shout out to Lisa. Shout out to Stackamoto. Had Stackamoto on the show a few times. Bitcoin Plus, man. You're going to be there. You're going to be talking. What's your time?
Yeah, I'll be doing one of the morning workshops on the first day, which is the 7th.
Yeah.
I think it's at 9:30 or 10. And I will be with Paul, our lead, Paul Miller, our lead front end guy, Future Paul on Twitter. And we're just going to be spending a little bit of time showing developers and whoever's there how to get into the Voltage API, how to get into the LNbit stuff, and how to use that to build apps. And hopefully people will use Voltage during the hackathon at the end of the week. So we're just going to teach them how to do that.
Super cool, man. Yeah, so many big things happening, not only there at the conference, but just in Austin in general. I hope to be down there by the end of June. If everything goes as planned, then
like moving?
Yeah, we're moving down there. Yeah, like I said, Unchained Capital is a big piece of that.
Yeah.
I actually work there. But just, every time I visit, I keep, I don't know, maybe it's just Massachusetts is warped. Maybe it's that I've outgrown Massachusetts. It could be a lot of various things. But whenever I'm in Austin, I feel myself. Like I could, behave like myself.
I know that feeling.
Okay, yeah. And here at home, it's like, I got my friends and that's all good, but outside of that, it's kind of like you got to wear a mask all day and kind of pretend to be somebody you're not.
I can't. When I hear like people in Oregon and stuff, and they're doing that, I can't. I feel like we're in a different world. I feel like it's weird. I don't feel like those are my people.
The signal is definitely
supposed to feel like a country, like we're all the same people, but it doesn't feel like that.
Well, I mean, not even in the same state. Like I grew up in Massachusetts, and I still don't feel like I'm a part of the state. I don't know what it is, but it's a weird scenario. So yeah, every time I've gone down to Austin, I've been probably 5 or 6 times since Unchained, and man, I could just like kind of like relax, like literally in my head, and just kind of be myself. And Bitcoiners are Bitcoiners, greatest people in the world. And I think Carr posted something the other day that really resonated with me, and it's that Bitcoiners just have a great way of getting the best out of you and reminding you that you're great and that you have something. And I don't think there's any.
Carr's a great guy, and
amazing guy.
Done that for me before too. So
yeah, he does it to me all the time. He calls me on my awesome. He has my personal number, and he'll be like, "Hey man," randomly, "Hey, how's it going? And how you doing?" "I'm doing great." He's like, you're amazing. You know that? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, the show is just fantastic. I did that and this. And I'm like, I got people that live right up the street from me that are supposedly close to me that would never tell me such a thing. Yeah, this guy is 3,000 miles away or whatever the distance
Dude,
is.
we're all a family. I definitely feel that.
Love it. Well, can't wait to go down there and soak it up with y'all and be able to interact and have these conversations. But yeah, Bitcoin Plus Plus, shout out to that. I'm not even gonna hold you too long here, Nate. I think we could record many of these episodes, and we should. But out of Bitcoin, just to wrap up the show, when you're not, reading about Bitcoin or educating yourself on Bitcoin, what is it that you like to soak up when it comes to knowledge? Books, podcasts? What's your go-to?
Yeah, man, all my podcasts are Bitcoin related for the most part.
Yeah.
I dabble in a little bit of trying to understand finance stuff, but it's not really my forte, but I kind of like to hear what the experts say on that. Books, I'm reading Fossil Future by Alex Epstein right now, which is really dense and really educational for me. I really like the alternative thoughts to the mainstream. So I wasn't actually going to buy that book, but he was getting so much crap from people wanting to ban it. So I'm like one of those people that I'm buying books that people like are just getting crap at. So I'm checking that out. Besides that, I just like playing with my daughter, and if I have time, I'll play a little bit of video games with the wife a little bit. But we're just a family in Texas, and working and playing, and I don't know. I like to work out a little bit, run a little bit, bike a little bit, go to the pool.
That's actually the last question was that is like, are you are you one of the seed oil guys? No seed oils. What's your plan?
I just try to avoid processed crap, and I try to avoid processed carbs. I'm not really strict on anything, but I love animal fat. I love animal food. So yeah, I can eat just a steak for dinner, and that's fine. I don't need to have a potato or anything with it. But I'm in my mid 30s now. My metabolism isn't quite what it used to be, but I would definitely, grab a steak anytime.
Yeah, I think we're like right in that same spot. I'm in my mid 30s as well. Have a huge weight loss journey back when I was like 25, went from 300 pounds to 150. But nice. I can't do that anymore. It's just not the same. And I've been sticking to, I have been kind of strict on the seed oil thing, but I think I'm navigating closer to what you're saying. As long as I can avoid the processed stuff, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use oil to cook. I cook my steaks in butter or ghee. Yeah. I'm a butter maximalist.
Yeah, we're getting there too. We actually just went down the, I'm probably saying it wrong, but the kefir rabbit hole. Have you heard?
I don't even know that.
Yeah, it's kind of like your own yogurt. But anyways, that's a whole different conversation you make yourself. But Nate, this has been fantastic, man. Thank you so much for your time. I had a bunch of other stuff, maybe like the Second Amendment stuff, but we could probably get around to and just to dig deeper into that. Hopefully get to meet you in person sometime soon when I'm out in Austin, and maybe have a steak with your brother. But please let the listeners know where they can follow you or anywhere you want them to go and get more information. Sure. Yeah, I had a great time too. Please invite me back anytime. So I'm Nate. I do support and education at Voltage, voltage.cloud. Please hang out on Discord, voltage.cloud/Discord. We have bots in there that like sling Satoshis to random people sometimes. So it's kind of cool. I'm Beef or Bacon 1 on Twitter. And I do This Week in Lightning. You can find us on Bitcoin TV. And you'll see me in Austin for BitDevs and the Bitcoin Plus conference next week. All right. Hey, listeners, definitely go check out any of those outlets that Nate just gave you here. Definitely one of the better Twitter followers you'll ever have. So follow him on Twitter for sure. I have a lot of fun just watching you go back and forth with other Bitcoiners. Some of them are not. But anyways, we appreciate you guys as always. You know where to find us. Stream us some sats if you enjoyed the content. Value for value on Fountain or on Breeze. I actually found out this week that there's like 56 apps that actually function off a podcast index. So check us out on whichever one is your favorite. Show us some love. That's how we keep the lights on. 5% goes to OpenSats, which is a really good cause here. And if you want to check us out video, get this 4K video on Bitcoin TV. If you haven't got there, we are on the legacy outlets as well, but we support the Bitcoin products. So let's do that. As always, we appreciate y'all. Nate, I appreciate you, good sir. And we'll catch you guys on the next week. Later.